general, but particularly hard as the technology for re-identifying data has just continued to grow. As quickly as we come up with some new mechanism for protecting data, we can come up with a method for showing that that's not robust. So Sanjay mentioned some work that was done around genomic data. We've long, in the genomic research space, we've long operated under this this premise that we all knew to be false, that a human genome, if he had no other information about it, was not identifiable. And that is probably not conceptually surprisingly wrong, but it really is wrong, and it has been demonstrated. And it's not just that you need the 3 billion letters of a genome. If you look at what the forensic approach is for police analyzing DNA, it's a few tens of locations in the genome.
Genetic genealogy, right? They call it genetic genealogies, all the new arrests that have happened.
Yeah. So one of the challenges that I think we're really struggling with is that data that we think should be non-identifiable, and this is coming up a lot now in medical images, where we're really excited to bring deep learning and do things with medical image data. So for instance, retinal scans, Google did some really nice work last year showing that you can predict diabetic retinopathy from a fundus scan. This is something that is moving into the clinic. They were able to do this because these were not considered identifiable data last year. They will be next year, right? And of course they are. That's how Clear works when you go to the airport, right? So this is a really difficult balance. So there are a couple of different approaches that I think about. First of all is you have to do a tremendous amount of auditing access, because we don't actually know yet what's good and what's not good. So a big thing we have to do is just to be able to know what's happening to our data. But there are some interesting approaches now that are starting to show up in other industries, and that we're looking at in healthcare. There's a statistical approach called differential privacy. So I expect this will come up at some point, which is probably reasonably good for a certain set of use cases. So I would say that we don't have a comprehensive solution. We're looking at different data types differently, and we're exploring different technologies for the privacy preservation.
And what kind of 3-letter agencies do you work with? You don't have to name them.
As a national privacy.
Yep. Yeah, and that was kind of the angle for the question.
Right.
Thank you.
Oh boy.
Yeah, you thought it was going to be easy, huh?
Yeah. So okay, I'll actually answer this in a slightly. I'm going to answer the question I want to answer.
Okay.
Let's start this way. I think a fundamental part, and it actually does segue into the conversation we just had, which is something that I always talk about, and I'm an OR person, right? Operations research, and something I always sort of challenge people to think about is impact analysis, impact modeling, right? It's something that every other industry does, but cyber does not. When you care about privacy, what do you care about, right? Like I post things on Facebook, I don't care, right? They're actually, the more likes I get, the better I feel, right? So awesome, right?
I do with privacy, by the way.
Right. So you don't really care about privacy, you care about an impact, right? How does this affect me, right? Do I care that my SSN was public? Not really. I care about the fact that my credit rating went down, or I can't buy a home for an interest rate, right? So there are these impacts that you're guarding against. And if we really focus on that, we come to very different conclusions than what even the legal system is going after today, which is, how does this affect me? What do I lose? What do I gain? What opportunities am I losing? Is this shaming me publicly? Am I going to lose friends? Like, what's happening? And And then it gives you a better framework of holding people accountable, whether it's companies, industries, whatever. And I've had this argument for a long time. Like, let's say a bank wants to share data with an AI company, right? Regulating that is not really like something I care about, right? What I care about is now both of you together take this risk and pay me back. If you cause my credit rating to go down, you guys pay me back. I don't really care. Do what you want, right? In a way, it opens up sharing, but in a way, it also adds more burden.
Great segue, by the way. And Matter, that's another follow-up to you. For the commonwealths and the common data sources, do you actually have any community oversight? And are they normal people, lay people, or actually are they experts, or both, or?
Yeah, so, well, we're still very early stage on so we're working with a number of...
Talk about the project, first of all.
A number of organizations to explore the idea of establishing really a kind of a health data ecosystem regionally, where regionally is from Oregon Health Sciences University in Portland to the BC Cancer Agency in Vancouver. And we have a very enthusiastic partner in Microsoft in this work. And so we have 3 different work streams that are happening now. First is around data discovery and metadata. But the second one is governance, and that's really the big piece. That's we in fact just had our first in-person meeting of the governance committee last week. We do not currently have patient advocates sitting on the governance committee, and that was identified by the initial committee members as a gap, and that's a takeaway for us next time. So it includes informaticists, it includes lawyers. We actually have a senior attorney from Microsoft. We have the lead privacy ethics person from the Provincial Health Services Authority in BC, which oversees all the healthcare delivery in the province. And then we have investigators. So this is the key. I mean, I actually think the functional definition of commons implies community governance.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Could you comment on differential privacy?
So
I'm just
yes, that's. I don't have a comment. It's something you really have to think about. This is where, like I said, the reason I say poor person's approximation is because if you broadly were to sort of run, even with mass data, even with homomorphic encryption, right? And I'm kind of going to make a stupid assumption right now. This is not how I see gender, but let's just assume that there are binary genders, right? Knowing that a variable can take one of 2 values, right? How much can you hide?
But what if there are 500 dimensions in your data set?
Still, I mean, one of those dimensions is unless, I mean, this is where I can go into the weird math stuff because that's actually very fascinating. Like, if you create new basis vectors where you encode the original state space into like 500 new weird vectors that are a linear combination of the others, right? And then you do analysis, right? Good luck trying to find that, right? But then you can because you know what the transformation was. But we can nerd out about that. But
Eric, in terms of moving into this more heavier reporting structure, you already mentioned creating a combinatorial medical records platform. Have you had a discussion with some of the healthcare regulatory, ARQF and HEDIS and some other places, on actually trying to change the protocol and the process to understand research use only versus therapeutic use versus just standard treatment for pediatric patients?
Yeah, I think, so I haven't talked to specifically those regulatory agencies.
Yeah, generally,
I think that was the intent of why PCORI was formed, and a lot of the research networks that were formed within PCORI and then the network of networks that share data across the whole country was really to Matthew's point that accelerating these data use agreements and agreements across institutions, if we could mask or de-identify the data or have limited data sets and have agreed upon contracts or data use agreements, then that would accelerate the pace of the use of for quality improvement purposes as well as for research purposes. And so I think that was really the original intent of why PCORI was formed and these networks were formed.
Art, you had a question before we close?
Well, just a point from the discussion is that your ethics, your discussion of ethics can't be passive in your organization.
That's right.
The legal frameworks are a floor, and you need to stand on that floor, but that's not always going to be high enough for you. You need to have open, honest discussions of what the ethics are towards your patients, or in my case, your customers. They can't be passive.
Yeah.
It can't be water cooler stuff. It has to be open, organized, and thoughtful.
Thank you, Art. With that, I think we'll take maybe a quick summary of where you think the world's going in this space, starting with Eric and then Archis and Matter.
I think it's, for us in healthcare, a brave new world in terms of the discussions around AI and how data is used and how do we protect the data. It's a ethical question as well as a privacy question of how do we protect our patients' data when there's potential of using those algorithms both to re-identify patient, but also the AI company or partner or even in-house, we need to use that to train the machine, Skynet.
Archis?
This is a good problem to have, right? Because like planes crashing, right, is a great problem to have because we have planes. Right, cars crashing, great problem to have because we can now get places. So whatever this is, we'll get through this, but we're in a great problem to have.
It's a very existential answer. Almost like Immanuel Kant saying.
I like that too. Yeah, I mean, echoing Eric's point, I think we're, in healthcare certainly, there's this great promise of potential of what we might do with data. And we actually, as a field, have largely been pretty data poor compared to other industries. And now that we're starting to see that maybe some of these transformative technologies could be brought to bear in developing cures or preventative approaches, it's really a great thing. But for me, I kind of look at this, I tend to see life as sort of video games, and you keep working your way up to a higher level, and you're kind of doing the same things, but they get harder. And this is kind of this next level, right? Thinking about data and talking about data is hard. It's hard for an organization to do. We often don't have the right, we don't even know who needs to be at the table often. And so it's just harder. Like the stakes are high, we're crashing planes, but these are, I agree, good problems to have.